Welcome to the Hotelligence Podcast, your strategic vantage point on the changing landscape of hotel safety. Hosted by Jim Kortz, a retired FBI DHS investigator, and Don Carr, a former frontline security owner-operator with years of firsthand incident response experience on hotel properties. Every episode brings you closer to understanding the full picture and what the future may hold. Let's begin.
Thank you for joining us for episode 6 of the Hotelligence Podcast. The shift change blackout, why context doesn't carry forward. I'm Don, and I've spent years responding to hotel calls and watching what actually happens on the ground, especially during shift change. And today, we're talking about something that comes up constantly in real operations, but almost never get discussed directly.
And I'm Jim, retired federal agent. So shift change is that short window where one team clocks out, another clocks in, and important operational context doesn't reliably carry forward.
Well said, Jim. A lot of people assume hotels run on structured handoffs. In reality, most don't. They run on quick conversations, short notes, and informal updates. And that's where context starts to disappear.
So let's start by talking about why shift change is a structurally fragile moment. So in a lot of operational fields, shift change is formalized. There are briefings, shared context, and so forth. But in hotels, the shift handoff is usually informal by necessity. One person is wrapping up their day, another is just getting started, guests are arriving, phones are ringing, there's just a lot going on.
Indeed. And under that pressure, details get compressed. Context gets shortened, and what carries forward is often incomplete. So you see notes like room 215 was an issue, or something odd happened earlier, or maybe keep an eye on the lobby. None of that explains what actually occurred or why it mattered at that time.
And without that context, the next shift isn't picking up the whole story. They're only picking up fragments.
So the human factor, overload and fatigue, most shifts happen when people are already stretched. The outgoing shift is tired. They're ready to leave. The incoming shift is immediately dealing with guests, calls, and other tasks.
And if context isn't transferred clearly in that moment, it usually doesn't get acted on later. And if information is vague, it gets deprioritized.
Not because people don't care, but because humans aren't built to absorb partial information at speed, especially when there are immediate demands competing for their attention.
And that brings us to the documentation gap. So shift notes are inconsistent by design. They vary based on writing style, confidence, time available, and individual risk tolerance.
Right. So one person writes a detailed note, another writes a sentence. Sometimes nothing gets written at all. And language matters. So writing something like suspicious guest doesn't help the next shift understand what was observed.
And at the same time, speculation creates risk. So staff tend to default to a neutral language.
And that neutrality often strips out what actually mattered: the behavior, the pattern, the reason the note existed in the first place. So a lot of people assume that existing hotel systems should solve this problem. But most of those systems were never designed for operational continuity.
Well, correct. The systems, they're built for reservations, billing, housekeeping status. They're not built for behavioral context over time.
Indeed. Usually there's a single free text field. Everything depends on how one person phrases a note in that moment.
And when that phrasing changes, continuity breaks. And when continuity breaks, patterns don't form. So let's talk about how context gets lost over time. Here's a common scenario. One shift notices repeated activity associated with a particular room over multiple days. It doesn't cross a line. There's no single incident.
Right. So a short note gets written. The next shift doesn't see the same activity. And without prior context, nothing connects.
Over time, each observation exists really in isolation.
That's right, Jim. And because of that, the larger picture never really forms. And when it comes to shifts, day shift and night shift experience the same building very differently. Night shift observes patterns day shift will never see.
Right. Day shift sees guest behavior that the night shift misses. Shift change is really the only moment those perspectives meet.
And often they barely overlap. I've seen situations where one shift had meaningful observations and the next shift had no visibility into them at all.
Yeah, same building, but different understanding. So turnover resets memory. Management turnover compounds that problem because policies change and standards shift.
Informal knowledge leaves with people, and nothing replaces it.
And each reset increases reliance on memory instead of continuity.
So when context doesn't carry forward, inconsistency becomes the default. Repeated activity stays fragmented instead of forming a pattern.
Each shift sees only what's directly in front of them. Without continuity, nothing accumulates.
Right. Awareness resets, not because anyone intended it to, but because the system has no memory. So in closing, the shift change blackout isn't about negligence.
Right. It's about systems that were never designed to carry context across time and people.
And hotels operate in constant motion.
And when information doesn't persist, awareness just resets.
So in the next episode, we're tackling a common assumption in hospitality.
And that assumption is that hotels are safe by default.
They're neutral environments.
Safety is something layered on intentionally, not assumed.
Next episode, we're tackling a common assumption in hospitality.
Right, and that's that hotels are safe by default.
Well, they're neutral environments.
Safety is something layered on intentionally. It's not assumed.
So remember, we're in this together.
And together, we make hospitality stronger.
We publish a short, written insider briefing alongside each episode. It goes out on Wednesdays when the episode drops. If that's useful, the link is in the show notes.
Thank you for joining the Hotelligence Podcast, where experience informs smarter, safer hotel operations and prepares you for what comes next. Stay informed, stay confident, and stay connected. As the conversation evolves, Jim Cords and Don Carr will highlight developments that help hotels strengthen their approach to safety and risk management. See you next episode.